Testimony Tuesday with Shaun Guevarra. Today on The Simple Truth, we consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong, chaste heart of Saint Joseph. I'm your host, Jim Havens, and our guest today is Shaun Guevarra, Catholic husband and father, Mission Advancement Director for Community Pregnancy Clinics, the largest network of pregnancy resource clinics in the state of Florida. You can find them and support their good work over at supportcpci.com. Shaun Guevarra, welcome to The Simple Truth. How are you today?
Doing good. Thanks, Jim, for having me on today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great blessing to have you with us. We're always on holy ground whenever anybody comes on and shares some of their testimony, shares some of their story. So very excited to hear more from Shaun in just a moment. But before we begin, want to remind you about iCatholic Mobile. It is the only Catholic mobile phone company in the U.S. today. When you subscribe to iCatholic Mobile, you help to fund the Station of the Cross. Check out iCatholic Mobile, iCatholicMobile.com. All right, Shaun, we always begin at the beginning. What was your early life like, your family, the culture that you grew up in?
So, originally from Toronto, Canada, and cradle Catholic. My father was from the Philippines, and my mom was from Canada, like third generation, so she's been there for a bit. And yeah, I have a twin brother, and so the two of us grew up most of the time we were in a Catholic school, actually, so very involved at the parish, at least being present at the parish. Teachings were mixed sometimes, whether or not we got the full teaching of stuff, but by the middle school and high school years, our family decided to move down to Florida, and we moved to Orlando. And just a big change and trying to figure out how things were moving. And by the time we get into high school, we were in public high school. So a huge difference in what that meant for support of our Catholic faith. I just remember trying to find the right group of friends and trying to find the right people that you can connect to. And it was probably the biggest challenge early on, but eventually, I went to college in Daytona Beach at Embry-Riddle and found a good campus ministry there, Catholic campus ministry. And it just happened that the chaplain he spent his deacon years as his priest formation, his diaconate years at our church in Orlando. And so that helped me kind of find someone to hang on to and figure out where I was going through my college years. So that's the gist of the early years. It was just cradle Catholic.
Very nice. Yeah, we always try to follow the sacramental graces. So I imagine you would have been baptized as an infant, first Holy Communion. I don't know. In Canada, it might be a little bit different. Was it around second grade? Were you confirmed in Canada before you went to Florida, or did that take place in Orlando? Tell us how the sacraments unfolded and anything you remember.
Yeah. The first communion, that was in Canada, probably around that grade time frame. And then confirmation, that was a big shift, because by the time we came down here to Florida for the first time, it was kind of, we weren't enrolled in the Catholic school that was doing most of the teachings. So we had my brother and I had a personal teaching with one of the sisters, Sister Elizabeth. I remember her well, for confirmation, and she kind of took us through the journey for preparing for confirmation. And so we were kind of isolated in that, and we got all of our instructions straight from her, and she was just a wonderful teacher. That's about it.
Was
the sacramental part. Yeah.
Was that so? Confirmation. You were in high school at that point, and You're going to a public school. Were you able to find something of a Catholic culture at the parish, some friends there, or was it more? What was it like? I guess for anybody of that age, there usually is some sort of tension between the pull of the world versus the drawing of Christ. And so, what was that like? I guess that tension for you. Were you into it at the time of your confirmation? Did you know what you were doing, and you wanted to live the faith and live it as a soldier of Christ? Did you get all that? Did that make sense? And were you in at that point, or maybe not so much? Share with us where you were at that point in your life.
Yeah, I remember, I guess the best reaction was meeting the bishop after confirmation and looking at the two of us, and he said, "So which one of you is going to be a priest?" And our outward response was, "No, not me." And I pointed at my brother, and he pointed at me, and could chuckle. But I do remember just a seed, that thought of that's another path. I hadn't thought about it. I mean, I enjoyed the faith. I enjoyed being Catholic in the church we were in. I enjoyed some of the folks. I didn't do a whole lot of youth ministry back then. I was shy, and I didn't know anybody because we weren't connected. We lived probably maybe 45 minutes from that church community, and so we weren't as involved. I probably knew more of the older generation that my parents were connected with, or the choir. My mom was in the choir, so I would sometimes just join them in the choir and sing with them for holidays. But I hadn't really put a whole lot of thought until that moment. And that bishop just looked at us, and I know I outwardly said no, but inside it made me kind of wonder. And that followed me for quite some time. I guess we'll talk about it a little bit more, but that followed me. Where is God calling me? And during that time, high school, I don't know if it was fear of the Lord or just his absolute grace upon me, but I just kind of tried to live by Catholic teaching as best I could. And I wasn't in any serious relationships. I didn't find myself feeling the temptations of it. I wasn't sure where my brother was going, that we weren't always in the same classes, but I just felt at peace, kind of just like following what God said to do. And I think it really did start with that question, and there was something planted in me.
Yeah, wonderful. And I would imagine, anything more to share on the experience of growing up and trying to live the faith and coming alive to it with a twin brother. That's an experience not a lot of people have. And I would imagine if you and your brother are on the right track together, that can be very, very helpful. But maybe if there's some difficulty there, maybe that wouldn't be so helpful. But it sounds like you guys had a pretty good thing going. Yeah,
we did for the most part. I think by towards the end of our high school experience, I'm not sure. There was a lot of different changes, and we were still both attending church. I think I started seeing it a little different. I don't know. I felt like I wanted to be more involved in it. I never ended up, altar serving or anything like that. But I would. I don't know. There was some draw to it for me that when I went to Embry-Riddle, my brother went up to Gainesville, Gator, and so I went to Embry-Riddle, and for me, finding that community of like that Catholic community became very important for me. And I wanted to be a part of it. And then just all of the experiences, like all the things that were, that happen on a campus, on any campus. And I just remember one of the orientation nights, and they're talking about the use of condoms and all these other relationship things. And they brought some comedian in, and he was doing a skit on that, some green jokes, and I just remember how uncomfortable I felt, and that I wanted to find sanctuary from all of that. And so I poured a lot of my time into the Catholic ministry with the priest that was there, and with a group of my friends, and we'd have retreats and whatnot, and I'd focus on that. I'd have to say, though, when I left campus ministry, I went a little bit to Texas, Fort Worth, and then I went up to up to Washington, D.C., and I ended up staying there for a number of years, 2003 until just this year, actually. And my first experience was that I didn't have any connection, even though I felt like I needed to be rooted in it. I didn't have anything up in the Maryland area, and it was a lot more liberal than I thought it would be. And so I found myself connecting with things that I like doing, like I like dancing, ballroom dancing, waltz and swing and stuff. And I got really involved. And at first it was a great group of people. And then I remember one day finding myself in Pittsburgh at this after-hour party after a concert, or friends of ours that played in a band were playing, and just looking around at, everything that was going on, just the sin that was surrounding me. And I looked at one of my friends, and he was also uncomfortable with it. And then there was this other girl that we saw, and she was like, "What is going on?" I mean, it's not just a drunkardness. It was just open, like everything. And I don't know. I knew that this wasn't the right place. Like everything about it was wrong. When everybody else felt like it was good and pleasure, it just felt completely wrong. And I got invited to it was a Filipino Independence Day thing, and I had no idea, no Catholic friends, nothing. And I'm going here in DC, and the friend says, "You've got to find another solution." And I got introduced to a great group up there in Maryland that helped me, I think, focus in on that and know what it fulfill what I was looking for.
Yeah. Praise God. Yeah, wonderful. Shaun Guevarra is with us. And as we head into the break, maybe just thanking and praising God for his goodness, and all those times, right, where you think about those times where it's like a crossroads that you're at, and you could go in a direction away from the Lord, or you could resist the temptation and stick with him and keep going his way. And it makes all the difference. And if you go down the wrong way, it gets easier and easier to go down that wrong way. To stick with the Lord is where we always want to be. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. Testimony Tuesday with Shaun Guevarra, sharing some of his personal testimony with us today. And before we broke for the break there, Shaun was telling us a little bit about his time in Maryland, where he has been for the past 22 years until recently. We're going to get into that some more, including the great pro-life work that he's been a part of. But first, Shaun, you did mention that you went to school, Embry-Riddle, Daytona, Florida, and so that is a school, if I'm not mistaken, quite famous for aviation. And you were sharing about the great experience you had there with a priest, the campus ministry. But what were you there? Were you there for aviation before you went to Maryland? What were you studying there?
Yeah, so my background is very varied. So I went there for aerospace engineering, and I focused on rocket propulsion. So I'm always that guy in the room that's the rocket scientist when they proverbial rocket scientist. And I started from there. It was such a great experience, but I wanted to really be on the creative side of things, I guess. And I started working almost immediately when I went out to Texas. I was working with a big defense contractor and working on some of the fighter jets, and that was the job that I got. And I had the lucky opportunity of someone saying, like if this is not what you want to do for the rest of your life, then maybe find some other ways to do it. Long story short, I did a number of these things called informational interviews. So I was young, fresh in the company, and I went to all the VPs and executive VPs, and I interviewed them. How did you get to where you are, and how would I get there, etc. Kind of a bold move, but one thing led to another, and I moved into business development. Business development led me to a job in the DC area. And then I started working with nonprofits and trying to figure what does that look like, doing development work for nonprofits. So that's the Embry-Riddle tie-in, and then it jumped.
Okay, well, yeah, go wherever you want to go, or up to Maryland now, and any direction you want to go with it, please feel free.
Yeah, so working with one of the big nonprofits, we were doing a lot of the international development work, and I saw a lot of the things that were occurring, a lot of stuff that's been on recent news, actually. And I guess I would say even the abuse of a lot of that, the power. And I noticed the liberal nature of, I was working in that business development with proposals, and I just noticed how much things would be inserted into programs and projects that wasn't necessary. A lot of population control type work, a lot of things with sexual education, condom distribution, and all of this stuff that's happening in third world countries. And so I found another small nonprofit I started volunteering with, and they were doing stuff in the Philippines. We had discovered for some doctors that that money from the US and other countries was being used for an offshore boat that was just off the coast of the Philippines. And it was being used to basically lure women from the villages. They'd bring them onto the boat, take them offshore, and then they'd sterilize them. And they'd implant them and all sorts of stuff, and all in the name of women's health. And, when I had started this stuff with the Philippines, I was doing a lot more of helping the poor. How do you help the poorest of the poor? And I remember giving all these presentations in DC, finding partners. So I was doing development work, kind of like a side hustle, right? I was just doing this as a volunteer and raising funds and putting on programs. And then it hit me one time, the March for Life was coming up, and we're talking about the poorest of the poor. And then I just ran across something that Saint Mother Teresa had mentioned, which was, that the poor of the poor, that we have the poor. Right here, she was serving in India. And then she talks about how poor we are in America, that spiritual poverty, that the fact that we have so many abortions just openly happening right here in our own home. And it got me thinking, like, wow, I'm doing a lot of stuff for a third world country right now, and I'm not doing enough for what's happening right here. And there's a spiritual battle that's just been happening right beside me. And not that I was ignoring it, but I wasn't a part of it. And I just kind of switched all of my energy and all my direction. And I started learning more about what that means, what was happening. I started going to Theology, the Body Institute, started giving talks on theology of the body. I would travel international, some stuff in Europe. I was down in Trinidad one time with Christopher West. Separate reason, but we were both there for the same conference he was giving. And but it was just amazing to realize that there was like just this missing idea, people understanding what it means to love this child in the womb. And there was just a story to tell. There was a message. And meanwhile, I had gotten back up on my feet. I was, at that point, 2008, I got married, and with someone who was doing all these missions with me. Her name was Donna. And we would do, just going around and giving all these talks, and a lot about relationships. I started doing a lot with young adults. Then I started doing stuff at the church. I was a pastoral associate for a while, and I was just working with confirmation classes, actually. And every time I just felt like I needed to inject some more of JP2's teaching on theology of the body. And the more I did, the more I realized that there was so much to just unfold. By 2020, well, I shall say 2014 at first, my father passed away from pancreatic cancer. And it started shifting my understanding of what's important and what I wanted to do with my life. I was still kind of, Catholic work was like a side hustle for me still. And because of the parish I was at, I was working as a pastoral associate. There was an opportunity to get my master's degree. And so I got a master's in theology, and I focused on ethics. I focused on that all the moral issues that were needed, and dove deeper into JP2. And in 2020, I I just graduated, got my master's, started doing more with that, looking for other work to do. I found myself with no work actually, and I will, gosh. So here I went from an engineer. I'll go with this. I went from an engineer, and I found myself all of a sudden as a senior VP at a yacht sales company. And of all things, I love the water. I love sailing, and I said, you know what? I can't find work to do. Let's go do this. God used me in that company to be able to actually share about my relationship with God. I would be talking with clients, high-end clients, selling $1 million yachts, actually some of them down here in Naples, and going to different shows. And I had this boss who was probably more agnostic, and he would just ask, like, what is so different about you? And we'd sit at the bar at the end of the day, have a drink, and I was able to talk about theology of the body. And I was like, wow, maybe God doesn't need me in the pews right now. Maybe God needs me out in the world. And what can I do about that? And how do you fix all this brokenness? Because that's all I would see is like all these people that had all this money buying all these $1 million yachts and these beautiful homes, and they weren't happy at all. There was something that they were craving, and then they ask, why are their kids not happy? And here I am doing young adult groups, realizing that the answer is that we're leading like generations astray, and seeing these kids coming out of college and these liberal ideas, and just wrecked, not understanding relationship, and not understanding love, not understanding how to be loved, not understanding how to love, and that damaged the relationship with Christ. And so I was debating on what I was going to do next. I'm sitting in this position, working, able to spread God's news still, like whatever opportunity happened, I would take it. 2020 though, 2019, 2020, my wife got ovarian cancer, and she passed away December 2020. And it floored me. I didn't know what direction to take. And all the things that I was working on, right? There's like two little voices. I mean, not to play on that cartoon, right? But there's like on each of your shoulders, right? And one is, what are you doing all this stuff for? Look, you didn't, did you not spend enough time with her? Could you have done something? Were you not praying hard enough, right? And on the other side was, no, you're doing God's work. This is God's work. Like, her suffering wasn't in vain. It's redemptive, and you can find joy. And I remember just coming out of that new year, 2021, a friend of mine, a very good friend, said, hey, there's a series of adoration talks and confession available. Come over. And I would drive 45 minutes away to join him at this church in Bethesda, Maryland. And the first one, I just like, God, what do you want of me? And that little seed of like, is the vocation to priesthood a calling for me? I gave it to God. I surrendered. I said, I surrender. If you want me to leave behind all of this executive lifestyle, what do you want from me? So first one passes, no answer. Second one passes, no answer, but I'm gaining calm and peace, and I'm finding pieces of joy in Donna's life and what it meant, and finding the way that she lived her life, and was always in gratitude. She always just was grateful for everything. Third one comes along, and it's the Feast of Saint Joseph. And I come out of confession, I go back before the Blessed Sacrament, and as clear as day, like, I've never really heard God speak to me as clear before. I said, Shaun, you're going to be a father and a husband. And honestly, Jim, I was angry. I was like, God, I think you missed the boat. I just lost my wife. We weren't able to have kids. We didn't know why that was the case. I just asked you if you want me to be a priest, and you're telling me I'm supposed to be a father and a husband. Well, fast forward, I find myself again without work. There was a rearrangement in the company. But just before that happened, I was down visiting my mom, who lives here in Maryland. She's in Lakeland. And I was visiting her, and we went to Orlando, and she asked me, she goes, hey, you're taking me out to dinner. Can I invite an old choir friend to join us for dinner? And I was like, yeah. And I'm thinking some 60, 70-year-old, 80-year-old, some kind of old choir friend that she has. And instead, this beautiful young lady shows up. Her name's Nina. And she was a friend of my mom's in choir back in the day when Nina was still at that church. We end up talking, and I was in the middle of writing. I haven't finished the book on it, but I was writing about relationships and kind of finishing the thought that, what is courtship and what is dating and what is marriage? But then at the very end, what is widowhood? What does that mean? And I end up meeting Nina, and we end up, I end up proposing to her and starting a new chapter. And it wasn't until a little bit later that I find out that there's a connection with St. Joseph, and that very same day, that feast of St. Joseph. Absolutely amazing how God works.
Wow, we're going to be back to hear about that in just a moment with Shaun Guevarra. And what a blessing to hear how God has been moving in Shaun's life, and to know that he's moving in yours as well. If you're in a time of great pain, brokenness, maybe right now, open the heart, come Lord Jesus. And maybe if you've been down the wrong road, maybe you're hearing Jesus say, come to me, and know that he's only a step away, and call on him. Come Lord Jesus. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Shaun Guevarra. He is Mission Advancement Director for Community Pregnancy Clinics. Support cpci.com. Shaun, please continue on.
Yeah. So I meet Nina, and after talking with her and seeing where her faith was, it was just beautiful faith. She has beautiful faith. And I have to say she's a beautiful woman, but her faith is what just really caught my attention. And so as we were talking more, and I would have visits to Orlando to meet with, see my mom, and then to see Nina, and then, we exchange more, and we'd be talking a lot. And so I finally proposed to her, and I wanted to make sure I was going to do this the right way as well. So I'm just, for everyone that's listening out there, right? I mean, I flew down from Maryland to Florida to meet with her parents, ask for her hand, had that conversation with her dad. And I said, we're going to do this the right way. And even though I already have this experience before of marriage, I'm going to just pour out my heart and trust in God's way of doing it. And so we built that relationship. And as we were getting ready for the wedding, we got married here in Orlando, actually. And as we were getting ready for the wedding, I was talking about this St. Joseph thing, right? I was like, on the Feast of St. Joseph, I don't know if I ever told you this story, Nina, but this is what happened. And so at this point, she knows my whole story, my whole background. She's been very supportive. And she's just like, wait, I was at that same time, 2021, Feast of St. Joseph, praying. She had some relationships that hadn't worked out well, and so she just was kind of like, St. Joseph, you know how to be a father, so guide me. And she asked for his intercession, and it turns out it was the same time that we were praying together, and so St. Joseph, had helped bring that together spiritually. And so, I still had that executive job just before we got married. And then there was a restructure in the company. And by this time we had decided that she was going to move from Florida up to Maryland. I had a house already, and, I still had remnants of that executive life, nice boat on the water, and things seemed like they were secured. And then I lost my job, and I was like, oh man, like I need to go find something. And she was great. She's like, nope, we're in this together now, and it's okay. We made the decision. It's going to be an adventure. And so she moves to Florida, and we're still searching for work. And finally, let me just say this about her, because I wanted to help her find work. One of the other things that was so amazing about Nina was I learned that she was working at pregnancy centers. She was working in Orlando at a pregnancy center. She also did some time, she's a nurse as an RN. So she was also working at a hospice company, helping with hospice. And she was like on both ends of the spectrum, fighting for life. And I knew that if she was going to move to Maryland, I didn't want to take that away from her. I wanted her to be able to continue that passion and that just missionary zeal for life that she had. And so we're up there, and I figured, well, the best way to connect with the pregnancy center is to go to one of their galas, and we signed up for everybody's gala, and we went to everybody's little dinners and banquets and galas. And there was one where we were sitting at a table, and they said, there was a board member with us at the table, and they said, we're looking for an RN. And I said, my wife, you guys absolutely should talk with her. And so she's at the table with me, and I was like, she's been doing pregnancy centers. She's been doing abortion pill reversal. She was leading that charge. So she was there answering the call 24/7 with these women that had abortion regret. And they said, well, do you also know someone that does development? And I was like, I could do it. What are you looking for? And I was thinking this was another volunteer thing or a board position. And they're like, no, we're looking for a director of development. And they also call mission advancement director. And so we both went for the interview, and everybody was excited. The executive director, the board, it was like a 2-for-1. So they got a nurse and they got a director. And we worked at a center that was right in the heart of Baltimore, like the grittiest most urban part. We shared a wall literally with Planned Parenthood, and the spiritual warfare that would go on, like all the time. We were constantly in prayer, surrounding ourselves in prayer, connecting with our church community. We found a beautiful ordinariate community up there, an ordinariate mass, and it was just beautiful. All the young families and so we just poured ourselves into that church community, poured ourselves into this center, this pregnancy center, and such great things that we were able to do, not on our own. Obviously because of God, just kept like pushing us and pushing us and pushing us, to the point that we were blessed with a daughter. Was born in April. She's now 14 months. And she was actually born on the birth date of my father, the exact same day, the 13th of April. And we were, it hit me again. I was like, gosh, this whole time, every time somebody has passed or there's been a dark moment in my life, I don't know why, but I've turned to 2 books. One, I've turned to the book of Job. And I always look at everything that was taken away from Job. And I turn to St. John of the Cross and Dark Night of the Soul. And at first it used to just depress me. It's deep reading, and it just seems so depressing at first. And then here, for the first time, the full realization that God truly keeps his promises. He said I would be a father and that I would be a husband. And here I'm a husband to a beautiful woman who is passionate about her faith. And we now have a daughter who's just amazing and is beautiful. And, I just realized that. And then it came back to me like, the book of Job, there's another part to it. It's the ending part where there's this restoration, and God fulfills that promise of restoration. And then even with St. John of the Cross, right? There's always more, right? And at the end of the Dark Night of the Soul, the whole point is that we've wiped everything away so that we can truly see God, not who we think God is, not our image and our vision of this, the cartoon, right? The old man with a big beard up in heaven looking down at us, but who God truly is and how he works in our lives. And I was like, wow, wherever God wants to send us, we need to just make it happen. And so with the little one, we said, well, Nina's family is down in Florida. My mom is down in Florida. And we really want family to be like number one on our priority. It's important. And we need to be near family. And so we tried the quick little convincing. Does anybody want to move to Maryland? Come back to the north and the snow and everything. But the more that we kept thinking about Florida as a choice, the more we felt peace. I mean, we had no idea how we were going to do it, what we were going to do. I didn't have a job. I still had the job up north, but I didn't have something to go to. And we finally settled in on Naples. And we were just kind of, we said, you know what, we're going to do something over here. There's a possibility for land. Maybe we can, get a homestead started or something. And we were just like diving in, like God's going to take care of us, and his providence will always, always prevail. And I remember sending a bunch of emails out to all sorts of companies. And I actually sent an email to Scott, the CEO of CPCI. And it, the next day I get this email from a recruiter, a Catholic recruiter looking to put Catholic people connected to Catholic companies. And so I thought this whole time that Scott received my email. Turns out he didn't receive that email. I had sent it to some like generic email and probably went to a junk box or something. But the recruiter was praying and discerning and saw my information on LinkedIn and other stuff and reached out. And so after several trips coming down to Naples and talking with the board and meeting with Scott and the rest of the team and staff, I remember the same question that I received with this board I did with the board up in Maryland. They said, well, if your background is like yacht sales, I mean, you've done the pregnancy center, which is good, but you have a lot of like yacht sales and big sales and business development. Why development with a pregnancy center? Why would that work? And I said, I spent all these years selling multi-million-dollar yachts to people that never needed them. I think selling the idea, the understanding that life is precious, that there's a dignity of life, and that we need to help these mothers and save these babies and help these fathers become men, true men of God. Like this, how can that be harder than selling yachts to someone that doesn't need them? And so, we were offered the position here. I was offered the position, and it was, it's just been great stepping into the culture that everybody has built here. And mission advancement director has been just that it's, yes, there's going to be development and raising funds, but at the heart of it is building relationships to build a mission. And I just realized, like, wow, like God has really placed me in a position where I'm right in between, right? I'm not just working at the church in the pews, and I'm not just working out in one type of mission field with selling the yachts, but I'm right here also in a very needed spot with the pro-life work. And I started looking back at all of the stuff that I was doing before, and my Catholic faith. I mean, I did a lot of talks and I did all these things on the side, and I worked for, volunteered for boards and companies, but my Catholic work part of my faith was a side hustle. And now all of a sudden God has placed me as my primary mission to do this. And so working from the streets of Baltimore, where we dealt with trafficking and we dealt with, poverty and drugs and everything else. I mean, being right next to Planned Parenthood in a rough neighborhood, preparing me for being here and covering, everything that we're doing from Naples, Fort Myers, Sarasota, Gainesville, like being able to connect with students and parents and communities and churches. And it's just realized once again, like God's fulfillment of his promise. And every time I surrender, the more I surrender to God, right, as hard as that seems, at times, the more that he just fills my life with more. And the more I just want more, and the more I just love him, and the more I can just experience that. And so, we came down to Naples. We're starting off and renting an Ave Maria to kind of get to know more people and build up that family relationship, and just finding ways to connect and knowing that we're at peace. I mean, gosh, we didn't know how we were going to move our stuff. We had all the packing to do, but we were at ultimate peace in our decision to move down here.
Yeah, amazing. Shaun Guevarra is with us. And again, he's Mission Advancement Director for Community Pregnancy Clinics, which is the largest network of pregnancy resource clinics in the state of Florida. With the great CEO, he mentioned Scott Beyer. So supportcpci.com is where you can go learn more about their good work and support them there. Supportcpci.com. Also, if you want to hear Scott's testimony, he was on a Testimony Tuesday here. I think he's been on a couple times, actually. So feel free to search that out, and I think you'll enjoy those episodes as well. But Shaun, just amazing to hear you lay out some of the story and the discernment of just following God in faith each step as you go. Just evidence that it's all real. Jesus and the Catholic Church, it's all real. And we're gonna. I hear the music here, so we're gonna hit the break. But then when we get back, we've got one more segment to go. We'll open the floor up for Shaun, and we'll see what else he's got for us today, where he wants to go next. And he's got a lot of lessons he's learned that he can share with us. So whatever rises up, whatever he discerns from now to then to share with us, it's going to be a great blessing for us. So we're going to be back with that from Shaun Guevarra in just a moment. But yeah, what a blessing. Thanks and praise to God. That should always be our dominant note for the reality of how things are. We owe him everything, including our very lives, of course. But there are difficult times, and to be real about that as well, and to stick with them in those times. He's sticking with you, whether you feel it or not. He's right there with you. Stick with him. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Shaun Guevarra, our guest today on this Testimony Tuesday. Shaun's been sharing some of his powerful personal testimony with us for this hour, but one more segment to go. Floor is yours, Shaun. What else would you like to share with us today?
So I just, as I was sharing this story, and you deal with all these difficult moments, and one thing I wanted to add was, when that decision, I'll put it this way, that decision as a widower, as a young widower, to be open to what God is saying and to be able to find this love. I always tell people, when my late wife left, when she passed, I wasn't sure what my next steps were. And I just remember that it took everybody. Everybody's there praying for you. I remember my circle of friends shrunk to a small group of people who actually, could communicate. Not that everyone didn't care, but it's just, you start realizing who's able to say what and can reach you. And I poured myself in prayer. And when I met Nina, I was trying to, it's hard to figure out, is this the right next step? And is this correct? And am I doing everything right? Am I going to upset someone? And I remember taking that to prayer, that conflict. And what came across was this idea, because everybody would say, so are you moving on from this death, right? Even with my dad passing, are you moving on? And I learned a great phrase, and it's build upon. Right? I'm building upon all of these experiences and these relationships. And we do this every day. We meet someone new. And so I am not the person. I told Nina this when I met her. As we were getting serious in our relationship, I said, I am building upon this relationship. I was married all of those years to Donna, and she was a beautiful soul and beautiful prayer life and faith life. And I said, so there's not moving on, but who I am today is because of everything that occurred in the past, all of the relationships, all of the decisions that were made, all the way back to, that bishop saying, are you going to be a priest? All the way back to, the college years of that one priest, Father Tim Daly, who was there for me to guide me. All the way back even further, I guess, going back to, my childhood and my parents, God bless them, just taking us to church, being present, even if not everything was understood and it wasn't as deep all the time, our theological growing up and whatnot, but it was enough that they were present and my dad being present and my mom being present, right? And all of those things build upon who I am today. I mean, the capability and the capacity that we have comes from that history of who God has placed in our lives and who we're willing to who we're willing to let God into, right? How he puts people into our lives. I remember having this conversation with a friend of mine. They're like, well, I mean, how does that work, right? Because you obviously loved Donna and you loved, like that life and everything and all that. And I said, absolutely. And that love doesn't go away. But best example, mothers tend to get this quicker maybe than fathers or guys. But you fall in love with your spouse, right? You're dating, you fall in love, you're in love, you get married. That love is real, and hope to God it becomes agape love, that you're willing to really truly die for each other, right? And not just this like friend love, right? And you're like, oh, I can't love another person more than this. And then you have a child. And you're like, oh my goodness, I love this child so much, right? And so here's your child. And then you have another child. You're like, I can't love any more than this. And there all of a sudden you love even more. God has given us such capacity in our hearts to love that sometimes I think we're just kind of either, I guess, ignorant of it, right? Like, and to be able to open up and share that message with people. A lot of times, I see one of the things that I really look for, and I try to find in communities, are there men's programs, fathers programs? Are there things that are happening to help these men, especially like in what we're doing with the crisis pregnancy? These women come in and they need help. I think it's like 68% of women, if they only knew they had support, wouldn't have chosen the abortion, right? And so if men could be men and not fall to this idea that, her body, her choice, or whatever she wants, I'm just trying to appease her. I've told plenty of men before, I said, that is the most emasculating thing that a man can say, that we need to stand up and be with and be accountable and be responsible for our actions and find ways to do that. But that doesn't happen out of nowhere. Like, the understanding of the capacity of love we have, the understanding what it means to be a true man of God, it takes other men, right? It takes that community of men to mentor and to take on that role of leading people, of being a servant leader to make it happen. As iron sharpens iron, right? And that's what's needed in our communities. And so it's great when you can see that. It's greater when people can realize that, wow, there's a need for that. And that just goes right along that whole thing, that we build upon what our past has been. And sometimes we might not be ready for that mentor person, right? But God will equip us with the tools. He'll give us the right moments to say what we need to say. And we trust in the Holy Spirit to that whatever words we say are not ours, but they're the right words that need to be heard. And I think it just comes down to surrender and love, right? Have gratitude what God has given us. That's what I found in my life. Like, every time, gosh, there have been times where I've had no money, and I've always told people like, oh, how are you doing that? And I said, listen, I know what it means to be broke, but I've never been poor, right? Like, God somehow always gave an opportunity, always provided something. And so you start with gratitude. And then I find that the next thing is putting yourself in that present mindset and just surrendering yourself to Christ and knowing that there's more for us to do, and then spreading it. Like, that's what we need. So I just feel we need, I see men here, the stories that come through at the pregnancy centers, and what are we doing to help men be men? I know that's just, it's my current passion and zeal right now that the Lord has placed in my heart, is what else can we do? What more can we do? Because, the first one is be a good father, be a good husband, be present, right? Actually encourage others to be present, to appreciate family life, and not to toss it aside with all the green jokes and everything else our society throws at us, right? And I think most people at least can get to that. And then the next part is to seek a good community where you can get the support you need, but then the willingness to actually be passionate and spread. And I mean, it's great to talk about your kids. It's great to talk about your wife. These are things that I wouldn't hear working as an executive at a yacht sales company. I'm sitting there at the bar having a glass of bourbon, and everybody has, I don't know, just other jokes about relationships and about past relationships. And so the first time I remember trying that, I said, I'm gonna just be bold and just say it. Like, I absolutely love my wife. She's amazing. I absolutely love what I'm doing. It's amazing, right? And this is my family, and I just want us to keep spreading that. That's awesome. Where God's leading me.
Awesome. Shaun Guevarra, thank you so much. What a blessing to have you on here today, sharing what you shared with us. Thanks be to God. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Jim.
And I couldn't agree more with so much of what you said, but especially about what you said about men being men, getting off the sidelines in this fight that we are in. You are needed, men. And if we could activate Catholic men, get them off the sidelines, man, we could change it all. We could change this world in amazing, amazing ways. And remember, Jesus is that man. Behold the man. That same man who died for you on that cross is the same man who says to you, whatever you do to the least of these, you do it unto me. Whatever you don't do to me.